have you noticed there's really not much in the news these days? If it weren't for poor Cecil the Lion, there would be nothing to be outraged about. That's because Boston 2024 is gone, dead, killed off. So who's to blame for that? Taxes, traffic, terror. Come to think of it, we never got to the third T. Boston 2024 was derailed before that drumbeat struck. Even Paul Revere couldn't get a positive message out. From the beginning, Boston 2024 was a target for naysayers, which is not to say that organizers didn't deserve some criticism. It's just that criticism was all we heard.
Every Olympics since 1960 has gone over budget.
Olympic hurdles, poison pills, the big degradé, athletes and VIPs getting special treatment, shifting budgets and shifty people. So, is there anyone to blame for so much negative press? Doug Rubin of the PR firm Northwind Strategies told Beat the Press, "Ultimately, it was my job and I didn't do it good enough." A lot of negative stuff appeared on Twitter, and Rubin said, "Reporters follow Twitter and Twitter drives perceptions. If nothing else, not being visible on Twitter hurt." Maybe they could have enlisted the Cecil the Lion followers.
Cecil's killing triggered a huge outcry on social media.
Like Cecil, killing Boston 2024 was, in part, just the thrill of the hunt. I believe that. I believe that. I think that's the way the media goes after, with the noteworthy exception of Shirley Young at the Boston Globe, who, had a range of coverage, and some of it positive, not all of it. The drumbeat was largely negative. And I have to say, Doug Rubin from Northwind Strategies was very, very forthcoming. He said, there was some debate about what to do about social media, and, in the end, he opted not to engage on it. But he personally believes that was a mistake. And I have to say, I agree with that, because he also said something interesting. We should have run it like a campaign, like a political campaign. And they just couldn't. They never really could get the message out. And it's the media's job to go after But
Emily,
the
part
downside.
of the reason they couldn't get the message out is because they wouldn't talk to you about the message. I mean, we tried over and over again, and I was a critic of the cynical critic of the Olympics. Rich Davey, who's a very effective spokesperson, he was supposed to be on with Jim and me on Boston Public Radio once a month. He disappeared. Palahniuk, when you finally got to hear from the night of the debate, sounded reasonable. He wasn't angry at all. He wasn't like that New Yorker guy that one of our listeners called Dr.
Yeah, he was the wrong guy. They picked the wrong guy out.
Are you crazy? Bring a New Yorker in to tell Boston what to do? So they hid. Doug Rubin has done this in political campaigns where you try to get, I remember trying to get Elizabeth Warren over and over and over again. He represented her. Couldn't get Elizabeth Warren. When you sit down with a radio talk show host or a television talk show host or a reporter, and you're charming and you have a point, that reporter tends to like you more, and they're going to give you better
there's no
coverage.
question about that.
And they hid under a rock.
And Rich Davey was the right person to put out there,
Exactly.
and they didn't.
Well, and in their defense, although I disagree that the media was completely against the Olympics. In their
they
defense,
were just negative.
They were in Boston 2024's defense. They had to serve the two masters. I mean, they had to appeal to the public, but they also had to serve what the USOC and the IOC wanted, and what they wanted was lack of transparency completely. I mean, just things happening behind closed doors. And so from the outset, they wouldn't share. They didn't want to share the bid. They didn't want to talk about the bid before the bid was
I'm acknowledging all that.
It created this perception that these were people in a windowless room planning for the city. And it's the media's job to be watchdogs and say, who's powerful here? What are our interests?
I know, but nobody ever focused on the Olympics. Nobody. They only went for the things that were going to happen bad to us. So a hardworking taxpayer, over and over and over again. Nothing about the international humanity that was going to be teeming through our city.
Well, exactly what was missing, was the bigger civic pride issue. But that wasn't necessarily the fault of the media, and it wasn't necessarily even the fault of Boston 2024. I think this thing landed with a thud from the beginning in Greater Boston and Massachusetts in general. I think it came out of the blue. I don't think they had enough time to really sell it in a good way. But I think also the idea of the Olympics in Boston it didn't conjure this, it conjured more apathy.
But it could
than
have.
anything.
Well,
we needed the song. We needed every time they came out. Dum, 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 dum. How about that?
I think it's hard to consider this outside of the context of the fact that what happened to Boston's bid has happened to bid after bid all around the world. I mean, we just went through the selection process of the 2022 Winter Olympics, where there were only 2 bidders because everyone in Europe backed out. Citizen revolts against large plans to have giant spending programs in Norway and elsewhere.
And it was
ended up being Beijing, a place where then they don't have any snow in the winter. That's going to have the Winter Olympics, and Kazakhstan.
Nobody gets a vote in that.
Right?
You know, there's no media in Beijing, and nobody gets a vote in Beijing.
I think I would put this in the context of the larger movement that social media has engendered over the last decade or so, which is that conversations that were once elite conversations that happened among the business leaders in a community, and the newspaper in a community, and the mayors and the governors has gone down to a different level, and that means that the conversations are not as controlled. And I think that same conversation that we've seen in city after city that has thought about the Olympics, we saw the FIFA blowing up in the middle of the whole process. I think it was just they were doomed to failure from the very beginning.
And it became an antiseptic urban planning exercise. And when it gets down to that level, then the media can come in and pick it apart, piece by piece.
As Marjorie knows, my favorite saying is, we love to run people out of town.
We do.
This time we didn't even get them to let them come into town before we ran them out.
And I am sad that the story is over because it was a great story.
Oh, absolutely. What do we do now?
This is back to Cecil.
Enjoy Los Angeles
right.
2024.
Well,
It's the casino, actually.
yeah, I know.
Just
We
wait.
should get those anti-Boston 2024 people off on the casinos.
That's right.